This podcast is an invitation to feel and experience the souls of famous old Hollywood homes and to have an in-depth journey to the areas where they're located through interviews with longtime residents. Either you're a fan of old Hollywood in Los Angeles, planning to have a vacation, or, an even bigger step, considering a certain area for your future home. This is your opportunity to receive valuable information and insightful advice you won't find anywhere else.
Hello, and welcome to my podcast. Are you in the mood for California? Today, we'll feel and experience Thousand Oaks, followed by an interview with incredible Diana von Welanetz Wentworth.
I think it's much more rustic. When I was in high school, I had a friend named Barbara Bateman, and her grandfather was Harold Jantz. And Harold, we used to come up here when the 101 was just a two-lane highway, and there was nothing here. Her grandfather had a ranch called Conejo Ranch, and I now live in Rancho Conejo, which is a 1,000-home gated community. And it's fun for me to remember that all of this land was empty. Mm-hmm. And now it's a very, very beautiful, upscale, kind of a rural community that has beautiful homes and amazing restaurants and shopping, and Westlake Village, which is on a lake.
Masha Korpacheva is a California-based realtor and a member of the National Association of Realtors in Los Angeles. She's an advocate for selling and buying homes with soul and practicing mindfulness in real estate. With master's degrees in spiritual psychology and linguistics, Masha brings all of her skills to work with her clients. An intuit and empath, she has touched many lives with her outstanding ability to see beyond the visible and helping to come to better understanding of issues and their resolutions. An adventurous world traveler, from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to exploring the Galapagos Islands, Masha has a particular passion for the City of Angels. Having landed in this paradise and adopted it as her home, she's been sharing old Hollywood stories since 2007. In the mood for California, feel the soul of old Hollywood.
And now, are you ready to experience Thousand Oaks? The story of Thousand Oaks is one of transformation, a journey from a quiet rural settlement to a thriving Southern California city, all while preserving the spirit of the land. Long before modern development, the Chumash people called this area their home, living in harmony with nature for hundreds of years. They left behind a rich legacy of culture, art, and knowledge, their presence still felt in the land they cherished. In 1542, the Spanish explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sailed along the coast and laid claim to the area for Spain. By the early 1800s, the Spanish governor granted vast tracts of land, 48,671 acres to be exact, to loyal soldiers. This land, which included the Conejo Valley, became the foundation for the settlements that would follow. The name Conejo means rabbit in Spanish, a nod to the valley's many hopping residents. During the 19th century, as California transitioned from Mexican to American control, the Conejo Valley became a land of promise for pioneers and homesteaders. Families arrived by wagon, drawn by the fertile land and the hope of building new lives. Among them was John Edwards, an English immigrant who settled in the area in the 1870s and built one of the first homesteads. His property, the Stagecoach Inn, still stands today as a historic museum, a time capsule of an era when dusty trails carried stagecoaches instead of modern cars. The early 1900s brought the vision of the Jans family, who purchased 10,000 acres of farmland with the dream to build a total community. Their influence remains deeply embedded in the Conejo Valley, their name woven into its streets and institutions. During this time, the valley was a pastoral landscape of chicken ranches, dairy farms, and apricot orchards. But it was Louis Goebbels' Lion Farm that truly captured imaginations. Established in 1927, Goebbels' Farm became a hub for tourists eager to witness performing jungle animals. Renamed Jungle Land in later years, the attraction left an indelible mark on Thousand Oaks. The motion picture industry also discovered the valley's beauty, using it as the setting for iconic films like The Birth of a Nation, Tarzan, and The Adventures of Robin Hood. Even today, filmmakers continue to be drawn to the city's scenic charm. By 1961, Thousand Oaks had become a dynamic and growing town, boasting shopping centers, an industrial park, schools, churches, and even a 4-year liberal arts college. Then, on September 29, 1964, the community made a defining choice. Residents voted to incorporate and named their city Thousand Oaks, a tribute to the majestic trees that had stood as silent witnesses to its evolution. In its first years of cityhood, nearly 20,000 people called this 14.28 square mile community home. One of the defining moments in Thousand Oaks history was the creation of the Conejo Valley Botanic Garden as the establishment of thousands of acres of open space, ensuring that future generations could enjoy the same breathtaking landscapes that the Chumash once walked. Today, with over 15,000 acres of protected open space and 75 miles of scenic trails, Thousand Oaks remains a place where nature and community thrive together. For those seeking to delve deeper into Thousand Oaks' past, the local history collection at the library offers a treasure trove of over 1,800 books, photographs, and pamphlets preserving the story of this extraordinary city from its earliest days to the present. Through all its transformations, Thousand Oaks has remained true to its roots, a place of tranquility, resilience, and beauty. Whether hiking through Wildwood Park, visiting the historic Stagecoach Inn, or simply walking beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, one can still feel the spirit of those who came before. Thousand Oaks is not just a city, it's a living, breathing story unfolding beneath its vast, sheltering canopy. And here we are. Welcome to Thousand Oaks. I am so honored to have Diana von Welanetz Wentworth here with me. Diana von Welanetz Wentworth's life is woven with threads of love, curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of connecting people. Born in Beverly Hills, she became a New York Times best-selling author, television personality, and influential community leader, guided by passion, perseverance, and an unwavering belief in the power of community and joy. The author of 10 award-winning books, including Send Me Someone, a true story of love here and hereafter. Diana co-authored Chicken Soup for the Soul Cookbook, part of a series that sold over 500 million copies. She and her late husband, Paul von Welanetz, hosted the new Way Gourmet on Lifetime from 1983 to 1985, blending food and connection. In 1985, she and Paul joined a documentary project in the Soviet Union with figures like Dennis Weaver and futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard, fostering grassroots dialogue. This inspired them to found the Inside Edge Foundation for Education, a pioneering platform for transformative speakers that helped launch the careers of Jack Canfield, Dr. Barbara DeAngelis, Dr. Susan Jeffers, and Louise Hay. Diana's introspective quantum questions have guided her path, leading to her first cookbook and a 15-year culinary career. Beyond writing, she offers online courses, coaching, and tea with Diana sessions, using joy as her guiding principle. As spokesperson for New Calm, Diana has continually reinvented herself, overcoming loss and finding wisdom in adversity. Inspired by Rumi and Pema Chödrön, she embraces surrender, joy, and transformation. Her mantra, "Joy is my compass," invites others to trust in life's limitless possibilities. Please check out Diana's website at www.dianawentworth.com. And today, Diana will share with us her remarkable journey and what it feels like to live in Thousand Oaks. Hello, Diana.
Hi.
Oh my God, such a joy to have you as my guest today. Thank you so much for finding the time for our conversation.
What a delight.
Well, Diana, you were born in Beverly Hills and have lived in various areas of California. Could you please share how the vibe of these places has shaped your outlook on life?
Well, I think being born in California was a special thing, especially since it was almost 84 years ago. And so living in Beverly Hills in those days, our first home was south of Wilshire. And I grew up right in Beverly Hills, close to Beverly High. It was a really interesting time because surfing was just beginning. It was the 40s and the 50s. I feel like it was the luckiest time ever to be born as I look back on my life, because there was so much innocence. And my best friend lived half a block away on South Rodeo Drive, and we would practice dancing the bop. And we had 45 records, and her brother was the captain of the football team at Beverly High. So, there was just an innocence to that time. And I think that California, and people don't realize that Beverly Hills was really like this very little town. We would see a lot of movie personalities, of course, but Rodeo Drive in those days wasn't a shopping street at all. And it had a bridle path on it that people would ride their horses. The main shopping street was Beverly Drive, where we parked diagonally. And there just was there was an Owl drugstore and Newberry's, which was like a 5 and dime, and a pet store. And on Rodeo Drive, there was a gramophone shop where we would go, and there were little booths where you could go inside with your friends and listen to the records that were for sale. So there was a certain innocence to it. There was no real commercial kind of thing. We had 2 theaters, the Beverly Theater and the Warner Brothers Theater. And we could walk everywhere, and it was just charming, in those days. So, and my first car was a pink Thunderbirds, in 1957. My father was an entrepreneur, and he started Beverly Hills Federal Savings and Loan. And he sold our house for $27,500 and bought a house right on Sunset Boulevard on an acre for $75,000.
Wow. These prices do not exist anymore.
I know. You can't buy anything for that now. But we later sold that house after he passed for only $240,000. But my friend who bought it sold it for $13.8 million in 2015. So it was quite an amazing thing growing up in that area and going trick-or-treating at Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball's house and Jack Benny's house and all of that. It was, as I look back on my life, I think I've been about the luckiest woman I've ever heard of.
Wow, wow. And I also remember you mentioned that in 1958, there was Easter parade in Beverly Hills and you were the queen.
I know. The Chamber of Commerce decided that Beverly Hills needed an Easter parade, even though the population was about 75% Jewish at that time. There was a contest for it. I read about it in the Beverly Hills Citizen newspaper, and I thought, oh my gosh, I know that I can win that if I go to the audition. I went to a girls' school called Marlboro, but all my friends were at Beverly High. And I did win that contest, and it rained that day. And I rode in a blue Cadillac convertible sitting up on the back part. And my date was Dwayne Hickman, who was Dobie Gillis on television. So my book, Send Me Someone, is a romantic memoir, and it has a lot of photos of all of these old events, in my childhood. So I was, as I say, the luckiest woman who ever lived.
Yes, it sounds like it. And how do you think it might have influenced your outlook on life? How do you see your life because of growing up in Beverly Hills at the time when it was so innocent?
Well, I think for one thing, looking at that newspaper and knowing that I would win that contest, a few years later, I was at UCLA in a sorority, and we were all sitting around and they were playing the music really loud. And I said, can you turn that music down? And somebody said, well, Diana doesn't like Elvis Presley. And I had this kind of a knowing. And I said, actually, I do like him and I'm going to date him someday. And I couldn't even believe where that came from. And they looked at me like I was crazy.
Wow.
2 months later, my mother took me to Paris. We were going on a tour, a cook's tour, and we were staying at the Hotel Prince de Gaulle. And somebody came running up to me and said, Diana, Elvis Presley's in the dining room. And long story short, this story is in my Chicken Soup for the Soul Cookbook and also in my memoir, Send Me Someone. But he did invite me to go with him that night to the Lido nightclub. And that came true. So I knew him for a long time after that. But how did I know that?
Yes.
I'm saying that my growing up in Beverly Hills and being open to all sorts of things that were emerging, I think California has always been a place where things are born. I really began to trust my intuition. And so my books are really about trusting one's intuition and trusting the magic that can happen when we are open and receptive to our highest good. So I am a child of California in that way that I believe in magic. That's the name of my next book, by the way, which is called Effect Magic.
Wow, that is so special.
I know.
So, Diana, now you live in Thousand Oaks, and it's a very different place from Beverly Hills. It's also very, very special. So, what stands out to you about Thousand Oaks, and how does it inspire your current chapter in life?
Well, I think it's much more rustic. When I was in high school, I had a friend named Barbara Bateman, and her grandfather was Harold Jantz. And Harold, we used to come up here when the 101 was just a two-lane highway, and there was nothing here. Her grandfather had a ranch called Conejo Ranch, and I now live in Rancho Conejo, which is a 1,000 home gated community. And it's fun for me to remember that all of this land was empty.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a very, very beautiful, upscale, kind of a rural community that has beautiful homes and amazing restaurants and shopping, and Westlake Village, which is on a lake. I love the rural part of it. It's also very friendly. I'd say that the community is very gracious and welcoming, and I really love it here. I never expected to live with my daughter, but she got divorced, moved into getting a separation, and my second husband was passing. at the very same time, and she came and stayed with me. She lived in Westlake, and so I would be back and forth from Palm Springs, where I lived. We enjoyed each other so much that we decided to look for a home together.
Mm-hmm.
So now I live with my daughter, and I'm really, really happy up here in Thousand Oaks.
Oh, that must be so special. And do you have maybe some of your favorite places in Thousand Oaks that you were willing to share?
Oh, sure. Of course, Westlake is beautiful, and there are restaurants right there on the lake. There's one called Boccaccio's, and I take people there when they visit because it gives them the feeling of seeing the boats and the lovely stores and the quality of this area. I live in Rancho Conejo, and there's a restaurant called Selvin's nearby. It's just extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It has beautiful shopping centers. The Oaks Shopping Center is fantastic. There's a restaurant there. Oh, I always call it the Cowboy for some reason, and my daughter scolds me for that. Called something dog, Lazy Dog.
Mm-hmm.
I love to go to Lazy Dog and sit at a corner of the bar with a friend who sits at an adjacent corner, and I love the food there, and I love walking up here. There's so many trails and places to walk that are just gorgeous.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Diana, you're the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul Cookbook. And my question to you is, what was the most rewarding part of blending soulful storytelling with the universal language of food?
Well, that came about in the most magical way. My first husband and I had a long cooking career, and we had a television show and a cooking school on the Sunsets. And we were growing very tired cooking and hauling food around. The chefs were becoming very competitive. It was the time of the super chefs were coming in. And Martha Stewart and I had been named the cooking experts East and West in House and Garden magazine.
Mm-hmm.
We were tired of our cooking career because it really wasn't about gathering people together anymore. And it happened that we were invited to go into the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War to make a documentary. And the people going were so fascinating to us. There was Mike Farrell from MASH and Dennis Weaver and the real Patch Adams and a futurist named Barbara Marx Hubbard. And it was scary. It was very scary to be going on that trip because it was the height, as I said, the height of the Cold War.
Wow.
What happened on that trip and all of us sitting around and talking to each other was I realized how much happens at a dining table where people are talking and connecting and sharing resources. And so Paul and I realized that we didn't have to cook food or provide food for people to create community around interesting subjects. And so we had the idea to start something called the Inside Edge, which began at the Beverly Hills Hotel in 1985. And we changed careers completely. We would have these breakfast mornings at 6:30 a.m. Nobody was doing anything else at that hour. And it attracted all sorts of people who had not yet written books. There were people like Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen who met there and started the Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to give parties where people had to show up as who they were going to be in 5 years. And Louise Hay was there and Dr. Susan Jeffers. And so Jack and Mark started the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and everybody thought it was a cookbook because of the title.
Mm-hmm.
Both the volumes 1 and volumes 2 became #1 New York Times bestsellers. And during that time, my first husband, Paul von Welanetz, passed away. He promised to send me someone. And 2 months later, I met a man named Ted Wentworth and was remarried very quickly. So I got a phone call one day shortly after I'd married Ted from Jack and Mark, and they said, Diana, you're going to write the Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook because everybody thinks it's a cookbook, and our publisher says that book can be very successful, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
The first printing was 950,000 copies, and they only gave me 3 months to get that book done. But it was wonderful because it allowed me to tell my life stories and gather stories from other people that were related to food. And I realized how much food is a catalyst.
Yes.
For connection. People would be on trips and they would happen to sit down at a table and meet somebody new, and it would change their life. And so it was a joy. And it really drew me out of just writing cookbooks. Paul and I had 6 best-selling cookbooks, one of which was Cookbook of the Year, into being able to write more stories. And so I went on to write a book titled Chicken Soup to Inspire Body and Soul, with Jack and Mark and Dan Millman. But that connecting my storytelling with my love for food preparation and community was really the best thing that ever happened career-wise for me, for sure.
Wow, it sounds like it. But this is so beautiful. And in a way, when people are sharing food together, it's so much easier for them to open their soul to others.
Yes, and to really have conversations that are meaningful instead of just chatting about the weather and things like that.
Yes, I absolutely agree. What a brilliant idea. Wow.
It worked out really well. We just closed the foundation after 39 years, and we hosted, believe it or not, over 1,700 of the world's leading thought leaders.
Wow, that's incredible.
And we have different chapters. We opened the one in Beverly Hills in 1985, and then shortly after that, we opened one in Orange County, and then shortly after that, one in San Diego. And all of those chapters were thriving for many years.
Wow, that's so very special. Well, Diana, with over a dozen books, a vibrant speaking career, and the Inside Edge Foundation that we just talked about, and that foundation brought together so many impactful voices. What now continues to inspire your writing and connection with audiences?
Well, I think the fact that COVID came along and we had to move our meetings onto Zoom, and now having so many connections on Zoom, I was invited to write the foreword for a book called Women Gone Wild, and got to have my picture up on Times Square, which is one of my favorite pictures ever. And that led to meeting a new publisher whose name is Lady J.B. Owen. She has a publishing company called Ignite Humanity, and she's having people write stories about moments in their lives that led them into igniting humanity in some way. So she's publishing my new book, and I also do a lot of consulting with people who want to reinvent their lives. I have a newsletter called Tea with Diana, and all of my coaching sessions are around Tea with Diana. And I just love being able to connect in such a wide-reaching way with people that I would never have a chance to know if things just took place locally. So COVID, in a way, brought many gifts, and one of them was Zoom and a way of connecting with people that makes it so much more fun and interesting.
Yes, and you can now connect with people who are not necessarily close by. You can connect with people across, the world.
Yes, and I love helping people discover what they really want to do now, how they can have an encore in their life that leaves a greater legacy and brings much more fulfillment.
Yes, and it's so honorable. And as you say about yourself, that you're a woman who has lived a deeply beautiful and productive life. I really like the way you express it, a deeply beautiful and productive life.
Yes.
And you have reinvented yourself multiple times. Yes. And being a certified life coach who actually specializes in reinvention, as you just mentioned, and you support people in reinventing their lives.
That's right.
What advice would you give to someone standing on the brink of a major life change? And right now, today that we are recording this episode, the fires, have just ended. Hopefully, they're under control. And the amount of people who are standing on the brink of a major life change is just unbelievable. It's astounding. And it's a major life change after so much loss.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to someone who really needs to reinvent themselves and where they live?
Well, I'm old enough to have a much wider perspective than younger people about how life gives us opportunities that we don't realize are there that are life-changing. I often ask people to make a list of the 3 most valuable years of their life. And I'm amazed when they talk about years that maybe weren't their most pleasurable or what people would think would be good. I know that for myself, the year that my first husband, my soulmate, passed away, was a tremendous loss, but it led me into a whole new life. So I have friends who've lost their homes in Pacific Palisades, and Paul and I lived there on a beautiful street. We raised our daughter there. She went to Pali High, and friends now that live near me have lost their homes. One is an artist who lost so many of her paintings, her life work, and her art supplies. And so it sounds perhaps too cheerful to look back and realize that when I look back at my life, the struggles were stepping stones into a whole new life. I even have a friend who lost his home. He was a Japanese man who says it's actually a good thing that he lost everything because now he has to begin anew. I think that's unrealistic for most people.
Mhm.
I do think that struggles can become stepping stones and that pain can turn into a possibility. So it's like having a clean slate. It feels like tremendous emptiness in the beginning. But as I look back on my own life, it was when I went through passages that were painful that my major growth took place. And I really would like to offer people, especially people that I know who've lost so much right now, sessions where we might begin to explore what possibilities might they have now that they would never have dreamed of.
Yes, yes, that's so very true because it is so easy to go into the victim mentality and think, why me? Because it's normal to
Yeah.
think about yourself. Like I've, been living a good life, I've been a good human being, and why did it happen to me? And it is so profoundly sad and difficult to go through this time, but trying to see just a glimpse of hope, trying to find this hope in some moments of life that is still unfolding in front of all of us is probably a good place for people to start. And this is so generous of you to offer sessions for people to try and make these little steps for reinventing themselves and their lives.
Yes. I think of Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was in a concentration camp, and his book has been seminal for people who've had tremendous loss because he teaches that the only thing we are really in charge of in our life is our attitude, how we are going to react to something. And he says that there is like this split second time when you decide when something happens, how you are going to react.
Yes.
I learned so much from studying him in my life. And I really admire that we can be aware of that. That's why my book is called Expect Magic, about choosing an outlook that may not feel quite normal, but can be quite magical of, oh, that's happened. What good can come from that? What good can be born? And I offer my own life as a testimony to that.
Yes, yes. And there is also a saying you can live as if nothing is a miracle, and you can also live your life as if everything is a miracle.
Yes.
And I think your book, Expect Magic, is basically just about that. Expect that everything is a miracle.
That quote is from Helen Keller, and I have a picture above my desk. I have an actual letter from her that is framed that reminds me all the time. She was somebody who was blind and deaf.
Yes.
And she transformed her life into something of great radiance and as a model of how we can respond in our life to the things that don't feel good.
Yes, and there are so many of them, and somehow all of the good things and all of the bad things at the same time are part of our human existence. We cannot run away from them.
Exactly.
So Diana, thank you so much for sharing your heart, for sharing your wisdom, and sharing your deeply beautiful and productive life with me and with the listeners today. I so much appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria, for inviting me. It's always wonderful. wonderful to be able to talk with like-minded people and to do whatever we can to help.
Very much grateful to you. Thank you, Diana. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for tuning in to Feel and Experience Thousand Oaks with my special guest, Diana von Welanetz Wentworth. If you enjoy my podcast, In the Mood for California, please sign up for future episodes at your preferred platform and please leave your feedback. I really appreciate your time and support. You can follow me on Instagram at In the Mood for California and check out my website, www.inthemoodforcalifornia.com. Selling and buying homes with soul is not just my real estate strategy. It's an intuitive and holistic approach that embraces your values, aspirations, and conscious intentions. If you want to discover the power of mindfulness in your real estate journey with my compassionate guidance, I'm here for you. Next time, we'll pause for a moment of awe at the breathtaking shores of Lake Tahoe, where the sapphire waters meet the sky in a perfect reflection of serenity. Then we'll board a flight for a circumnavigation journey, one driven by the mission of spreading peace across the globe. Where can we truly find peace? Is it hidden in the untouched landscapes of nature, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, or in the connections that we create with each other? I just cannot wait to embark on this journey with you.
In the Mood for California. Feel the soul of Old Hollywood.